This trip means a lot to me because I grew up on this river, on the James, and I always wanted to explore it from its headwaters all the way out to the Chesapeake Bay. It has really kind of shaped who I am today. It raised me. Something that I really was interested in is whether or not this river is being protected under the legislation that we currently have.
The muddy waters of the James River peaked this afternoon about 13.5 feet above flood level. The city's sewage treatment plant is shut down and is dumping millions of gallons of untreated waste directly into the river.
Billions of gallons of raw sewage and stormwater runoff flows into the James when it rains.
The city still needs over $800 million to fix the problem.
On the James River this weekend, if you jump in or expose yourself to the water, you may just get sick.
It's historic, it's beautiful, and it's all ours to protect.
Guess where are we going?
We're going to be on the James River for about 350 miles until we reach the Chesapeake Bay.
Okay.
And that'll be
Days from now.
in 21 days.
Okay.
I'm ready to start paddling.
Yeah, me too.
21 days, 350 miles, James River.
Let's go.
4 women, 2 canoes, 1 river,
One heart.
1 tent.
One tent.
This team of women that have joined me on this trip are really some incredible people. Beth is our resident sound and camera operator and is also an environmental scientist, so she'll be helping us take water samples as we paddle down the James to study its quality. Grace is our director of photography on this journey, so she'll be behind the camera most of the time. She's never done a canoe trip like this, so I'm feeling really lucky that she's decided to join us. Sejal and I have known each other for 10 years and have paddled all over, and it's really special to be able to come and paddle this river with her. We've always traveled to other places to paddle together when we live on this beautiful river, and it's right in our backyards. All right, so right now we are right here. And it looks like this in real life. We have the Jackson coming in on the right and the cow pastures right in front of us. And this is the start of the James.
So we figured we'd do some water testing along the way.
Awesome.
Just to kind of see what the water quality is and how it's changing as we go down the James River. We're working with a school as well, right? To kind of get a better idea of what pollutants we're looking at.
Yeah, so we're gonna be sampling and sending them to a school that's along the James River. So we'll be doing some basic testing right here, but then we're gonna learn a lot more as we head downstream from the students that we're working with.
So we tested today just to kind of get a baseline idea of what our numbers are, and then as things change, as we see pollution and agricultural runoff and things like that, the numbers will change.
Spanning 348 miles, the James River is one of the longest contained within a single state and is known as America's founding river. Utilized by indigenous peoples for thousands of years, the river was known as the Powhatan and was renamed by English colonizers in 1607 when they founded Jamestown. As the Industrial Revolution churned its wheels, the James River was abused, with toxic chemicals entering its water unchecked. By the 1970s, a once pristine river was declared to be one of the most polluted in the nation. Through decades of legislature and cleanups, the James is now the poster child for resiliency, used for drinking water and recreation for millions. However, it is still threatened by pollution from agriculture, sewage overflow, and a legacy of toxic chemicals. Essentially, Virginia has a poop problem, and it's affecting our waterways. And that problem begins all the way upstream in just the first few miles on the river. These cows just walked right down into the James River for a swim. I mean, the water's nice and everything, but he's so far out there. Agriculture is a main staple in Virginia, but cattle are a major contributor to river pollution. Their access to waterways increases nutrient levels as the runoff of sediment, fertilizer, and manure mixes directly with the river. This decreases oxygen in the water, making it more difficult for aquatic life to thrive.
What we've done in Virginia up until now is asking farmers to take voluntary actions to keep their cows out of the streams and then allow the water to run off without that pollution in it.
National and statewide legislation has focused on point source pollutants like pipes for several decades, but non-point source pollutants like agricultural fields have been trickier to regulate.
We do wonder whether the pace of these voluntary actions is going to be enough to reach our goals on time. If we fail together, some of these practices will have to become mandatory because our waterways, the health of our rivers, and the Chesapeake Bay are really going to require it.
The James River consistently scores a B- on its health report, meaning the watershed still struggles with pollutants that affect fish, algal levels, and the cost of water treatment. The score means the river can be used for recreation and fishing, but there can be health risks from pollutants in the water.
Hopefully, high school students that are looking at these under a microscope will find little organisms living on these bits of algae. If there are, that's a good indicator that the water is pretty clear, which means that sunlight's getting through and that helps life exist in the river.
Just seeing all the wildlife has been really amazing. Getting a chance to take time to actually look around instead of just running a rapid has been really nice.
Guys, guess what? We're about to pass 50 miles on the James River in 3, 2, 1. 50 miles down! Woo! Oh, yeah.
And how many to go?
300.
So we've been taking the samples along the way, and we've been doing water and then the algae.
That's exactly what we need.
Okay, cool, cool.
Because Jess and her team can't drag a lab along behind them, my students are helping to assess water quality through qualitative and quantitative measures in our classroom at Henrico High School. These kids have lived on the James River most of their life. The most important piece about what we're doing with the sampling is our ability to make comparisons between areas such as this, where magically you can see the bottom, versus places that are closer to where these students are living, where you can't. It's just brown.
So we started with our samples right at the top of the James where the Jackson and the cow pasture come together. So this is your surface.
The kids aren't going to believe that this came from the same river that they live on. They're going to think I put bottled water in here. This is crazy.
We'll keep taking samples while we head downstream.
Yep.
And we'll give you some more.
I'm excited.
This is a repeat after me song.
Yes.
There once was a ship that put to sea.
There once was a ship that put to sea.
The name of the ship was a Billy O.T.
The name of the ship was a Billy O.T.
The wind dipped back, her bow dipped down.
The wind dipped back and the bow dipped down.
Blow that Billy O blow. Huh!
Blow that Billy O blow. Huh!
I'm getting anxious as we move downstream. So far, we've only paddled flat water, and with over $20,000 of camera equipment, flipping the canoe isn't an option. But tomorrow, we arrive at Balcony Falls, which is the biggest whitewater we've seen so far. It's where I learned how to paddle, but loaded canoes are much different than the kayaks Sejal and I are used to. This is our next to last day of being in an area where you can consistently see the bottom of the river.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen agricultural runoff and cows in the river and all that, which obviously creates pollution, but it'll be interesting to see how it changes even more downriver.
This morning we woke up and the river is low, so I'm nervous with how this is going to go with rocks. If we hit something with these canoes, they're tipping. Sejal, it's got a curler coming from the left side, so just be careful with that. Okay.
All right, Grace, you ready?
Yeah.
It happened so fast. We started to fill up, and before we could even do anything, we were over.
It was horrible. And there was a great panic. I feel like I blacked out. I just imagined everything going everywhere and having to swim to shore and put it all back together. And when we flipped it back over, it turns out that tying everything into your canoe actually works, and everything was in there. We got back in there pretty quick. I got an amazing shoulder workout from bailing so much water.
We're leaving the rural James River region and entering more populated areas. The cities along the James are historic, and their infrastructure has definitely aged. Not only does the James suffer from agricultural runoff upstream, but downriver it faces a battle involving human waste. Lynchburg and Richmond were both built with systems where pipes funnel sewage and stormwater together to reach a wastewater treatment facility. In dry weather, those systems work well, keeping pollution out of the river. But when heavy rain falls, the systems are overwhelmed and raw sewage is dumped straight into the river. While billions of dollars have been poured into updating these systems, the James River still sees hundreds of millions of gallons of raw sewage enter its waters each year.
So if you think back 50 years, I think we had a completely different mindset about our rivers and waterways. I think we saw them as just sewerways that would flush anything that you put in it out to sea, and it wouldn't be a problem for your community anymore. We don't want to repeat that. We don't want to go back to where we were and have to do that work again. We just want to keep getting better.
I just wanted to point out over there a bunch of rafters getting ready to come in down here at this entry point to the river. And on a day like today when it rained a lot, when those facilities are full, there's no discharge out here. That's why we do what we do, so people can get in the river and feel safe.
So tomorrow when we're rafting, we should come down and check this out if we get any more rain.
If we get a little bit of rain, if it rains steady and soft, we can take that. If there's a big gully washer and a lot of volume comes really quickly, that could be a problem.
Today is Richmond Day, which is really exciting. This is the last whitewater section that we're going to see. It's also the biggest whitewater we're going to see. We have some rain that came in last night, and so it lifted the water levels for us. It's a little chilly out, so we're wearing all of our essential layers. Can't forget the most essential part, which is our tutus, to celebrate this wonderful, wonderful day. So we'll be rafting through Richmond and meeting up with the kids that are studying our water samples on Belle Isle today. Great to meet you guys. Thanks for coming out today.
We also brought some samples of our own to show you.
Oh, cool. It's
like that.
It solidifies.
Where is that from?
It's from a school, from the tap.
It's from your school?
Tap, yeah.
So this is right when they turn their tap water on, and this is after 10 minutes of running. Where's the water coming from?
We are not sure, and I've asked the school, and they are not sure either.
Wow.
The kids will have the opportunity to take samples directly with Jess, seeing how she collected all of the samples that she's been giving us throughout the course of this project, and they get to see how that data gets to us. They're building their confidence with this project, and you can see it in their faces. Without this piece of ecology learning, they wouldn't have exposure to these kinds of concepts. And I think it's really important for them to realize you're part of a bigger community. You're part of a bigger world.
I was honestly surprised to see just how contaminated some of this water was that we have from like across the area.
Meeting the students in person allowed us to hear what they'd found in the water samples. Some of the more interesting results were that they detected chlorine in the water from just above Balcony all the way through Richmond. Chlorine is typically added to public water supplies as part of the disinfection process. Another find was that there were elevated levels of bromides near a power station upstream of Richmond, which could indicate the coal ash holding ponds located next to the river may be allowing contaminants to enter the water.
Okay.
The students are continuing to test for the afternoon, but we have some major whitewater we need to paddle before we lose daylight. At Balcony, one of our canoes flipped, but here, the rapids have a higher consequence if we swim, so picking the right line is essential.
All right. This is Hollywood. Ready? Brace in. All forward. Stay in. Good job. Good job. All forward. Break. Back row. Back on the left! All forward! Yes! Back on the left! All forward!
That was the last rapid. Now we just gotta get through all this technical stuff. Good job, Sejal.
Yeah, Sejal.
Sejal!
Woo! The steps for the paddlers that are paddling the whitewater section through Richmond are about 25 feet upstream. Whenever it rains and the Shaka retention basin and the wastewater treatment plant systems are totally filled up, this is where the rest of the water comes out. So it's stormwater and sewer systems that dump straight into the James River right here in the 14th Street takeout. What is really great is that Richmond has passed some legislation where they need to update those sewer systems by 2035. And so right now they can capture about 90% of their outflows, and by 2035 that goal is to be mandated for them to capture 100% and be able to retain all of their combined sewer systems so that they don't flow out into the James River.
It was so fun today. We had some crazy rapids. And then the second one we were like, I looked at Grace and she's like, and her contact rolled back in her eye.
It took a solid minute for my contact to roll back into place, so I was like going down the rapid like this.
We both got facefuls of Richmond James River water.
The river is getting really wide, and I feel like the smallest little person inside this, like, vast river.
Yesterday we left the James River proper and arrived into the James River estuary. Pretty soon it's going to become a river that is like 4 miles wide in some places. It's been really heartwarming to be able to see all of the people that are so passionate about this river and then just get to experience firsthand why. This river is beautiful, this river is resilient, it's pretty cool.
Woke up in a puddle. It's 5:45 in the morning. We're gonna puddle into the bay today. We're trying to beat the storm.
Looks like we're clear until around 1:40, and then it starts to get pretty bad. So by 2:30 we definitely need to be off the water and stay off the water. The tide's against us. That's the only thing that's a little bit concerning. We're gonna be pretty exposed as we come around that spit. It's gonna be windy, it's probably gonna get choppy. My heart's pounding so fast right now. That's the Chesapeake Bay right there. Oh my god. Holy. We're going further. We made it! I'm full of a lot of emotions. I'm so glad that I've gotten to know my river from its headwaters all the way out to the bay. It was really cool for us to be able to kind of follow the journey that water makes across the state of Virginia and be able to think of that in a wider sense of our river systems here in the United States. These waterways need constant protection and advocacy.
Human connection has been a big thing, which is kind of surprising because it's a river. I mean, water is essential. But to have it kind of flowing in a way where you can play on it and hang out around it, and all this wildlife is there, and yeah, pretty cool.
all living things need to be respected. And when you pollute into the rivers, when you don't take care of what has been given to us, you're doing it a disservice.
Our waterways need people who care about them, and the people who care about them are going to be the people who are living right there in that watershed and are connected to the rivers, the creeks, the streams, and everything that surrounds them in the environment. Hi, good evening. Thank you all so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed my film, A River Called Home. I am Jess Wiegand. I'm the director, producer, editor, and expedition leader for A River Called Home, and I am absolutely thrilled that I was able to be a part of this team and be a part of this story and explore the river that I was lucky enough to grow up on. I want to give a special thank you to the American Center in Moscow for putting on this event and for having me to answer questions. If you have any questions about the film, please feel free to put them in the chat box and I will answer them. I have a few that have come in. The first one is: the journey of the four women in the film presents a powerful narrative of physical challenges and environmental exploration. How did you approach balancing these two elements in your storytelling? So we had the four of us on this journey. So it was myself and Sejal and Grace and Beth. And Sejal and I are lucky enough to have lived or currently live along the James River and get to know it really well. Grace and Beth are not from the area, but are really talented filmmakers that I am lucky to know and work alongside with. And when I asked everyone to come on this trip with me, we knew that it was going to be an expedition and something that was going to take us 3 weeks to do, but we didn't know exactly how hard it was going to be. I was very familiar with the upper region of the James River, and so I had grown up around there and knew the Balcony Falls section really well. And then Sejal lives down in Richmond, and so she's really familiar with that area. But neither of us really had experienced the middle region, the Piedmont region of Virginia, or the tidal region, which ended up being the hardest part of the journey. And so we, on top of that, had to balance filmmaking as part of that. And so we worked alongside each other to kind of put together a routine and work with one another in order to overcome the physical challenges of just having to wake up really early, stay up really late at night, interview people along the way, capture all of the wildlife footage and all of the footage of the expedition that we needed to. And then on top of that, we were also conducting this study of the water quality where we were working alongside the students. And that was where the help came in that we had with Emma Arntz-Quagliano, who was the teacher that we were able to work with. And she took it upon herself to come out and collect the water samples from us several times throughout the trip, and took it back to her students. And her students' enthusiasm was what really made this something that was a special project for us to work on. And so the approach for balancing those two elements of the story really came through this immense amount of teamwork that happened, both amongst my expedition team members and Emma, who was the teacher that we worked alongside with, and the students that she was teaching, who just really wanted to put together a quality study for what we experienced as we headed downstream. The second question is, collaboration seems to be a significant theme in the film, with 4 women working together to overcome challenges. How did you foster a sense of camaraderie among your team, and how did it impact the filmmaking process? This is a really great question. So even in my last answer, I talked about teamwork and how much we all work together. And it's funny when people ask me about this question, it makes me laugh, because often when you put together a team that's going to be living out of one tent together for almost a month, you want to do some kind of introduction and maybe see if people are going to get along really well. And we just didn't have the ability to do that. We filmed this in 2021, and it was not quite peak COVID, but there were still restrictions on getting people together, and a lot of us were really spread out until the launch day. And so the day before we got on the James River, we all gathered, and that was the first day that my entire team met one another. And so Sajal and I had known each other, and then Beth and Grace knew each other, but it was the first time that all of us met together. And so I was really lucky that everybody had a great attitude about meeting new people and spending almost a month with them, and kept a really great attitude through the entire expedition. We definitely had some hard days where it was really hot and we were all really tired. There were long days of paddling in the middle of the trip where we were doing about 20 miles a day plus filming on top of that, where we would have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and start breaking down camp and then filming as we were leaving camp, and then going back to pick up our primary camera operator, and then turning back around and paddling what we had just paddled, and just kind of doing a lot of things that took a lot of time and patience, but we really did have just a stellar team to work with that made that possible, and everybody had really great attitudes about everything, which was really wonderful. And I think it shows in the film how much fun we were able to have with one another as we were headed downstream. The third question is, as both the director and expedition leader, what were some of the unique challenges you faced during the filming process, considering the dynamic nature of the expedition itself? Yeah, so that's a really great question as well. So I have a background in experiential education and wilderness leadership, and so that's what my undergraduate degree is in. And then I went on to study film and media arts with a concentration in environmental and wildlife filmmaking at American University for my master's. And so I had the background of putting together expeditions and had done so before. I had put together a 21-day in my past where I was the expedition leader, and then I had been on several other multi-day expeditions as a team member. And I wanted to make sure that this trip was planned out in a way that was going to make sense for my team and for me and for the filmmaking process. And so I absolutely lend a lot of what I knew to my undergraduate degree and what I learned in college at Brevard College in North Carolina. And then I also leaned pretty heavily on our logistics coordinator, who also is my mom, who runs an outdoor education company and has a lot of connections along the James River as well. And so she helped us out by kind of filling in the holes of my plan of finding us campsites where I wasn't able to find it, and just connecting us with people who helped us along the way. And so the community that came together to support us as we headed downstream really reflects how much care there is for this river and how healthy it's going to be and continues to improve on itself in quality. And it is all because of the people who live along this river who really care deeply for it. And those are the exact same people who really showed up to help us. As the film director, I was making sure that what we were capturing was going to follow along the storyline that I was trying to tell. And so as we headed downstream, we initially set out and thought, this was going to be a story about us heading down the river and talking to experts along the way, which absolutely is something that happened. But I wasn't quite anticipating our connection with the students who worked alongside us to be as strong as it was. And so when they came out and met us on the river in Richmond, that was something that was really powerful. And we pivoted our story a bit to focus more on the work the students had done and what they contributed to the story, because their passion and their love for the river that they developed through this project was something that was really inspirational. Our fourth question is, throughout the journey, the team encounters obstacles such as whitewater rapids and toxic pollution. How did you ensure the crew's safety? So that is a great question. On the whitewater side of things, so both myself and Sajal are whitewater instructors through the American Canoe Association and have training for swiftwater rescue, and wanted to make sure that anything that we were going to be paddling was within our ability to rescue both the gear and the people who were on the trip with us. And so that was something where I felt really comfortable because it was a river that both of us were really familiar with. The whitewater sections were the sections that we basically have memorized because we paddle them so often. And so that was something that, while there could have been things that went wrong and we did actually have a canoe that flipped, we felt very capable in being able to rescue in whatever situation we may have gotten ourselves into. I'm sure you noticed in the film when we got to Richmond, we did end up switching into a raft instead of canoeing through. That was two kind of different things that made that decision happen. One was that we did have a canoe flip at Balcony. And so that whitewater isn't as technical as the whitewater that is downstream in Richmond. And so since we had a canoe that flipped because of how loaded down it was in the Balcony Falls section, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to run into that issue somewhere where if you swim, there can be some injuries that happen. And so we kind of factored that into our decision. We also, the day before we put on the river in Richmond, got a lot of rain. And so the water levels came up and the water was a bit browner. So it was more difficult to see any rocks or any kind of obstacles that were going to be in our way. And so we decided to switch into a raft, and that was for safety, to ensure that we had a good time going down the river and we kept all of our gear and our people safe. As for the pollution, the combined sewage overflows that happen only happen when it's severe weather and are really only an issue once you get below Richmond. And so when we were going through Richmond, that was something that we had on our minds. We luckily didn't go through during an event where there were any CSOs that were happening. And so we didn't have any overflow events while we were on the river, which was very fortunate. As for the upstream section where the agricultural pollution was really kind of featured in the beginning of the film, that's something where the erosion contributes to sediment in the river, but it wasn't going to be something that would get us sick. And so that was kind of what we were paying attention to, was mostly rain levels, to make sure that if there were any combined sewage events that happened, we were going to be able to take steps to keep ourselves safe. Question 5. A river called home advocates for environmental preservation and advocacy. What message or call to action would you like the audience to take away from the film? So the message that we are hoping people hear from this is that you can access your resources that are in your backyard. This is a film that we made utilizing a river that both Sajal and I call home. and love very dearly. And it's very close to where I grew up. It's very close to where Sejal lives. And it's something where even the students that we were working with, I don't think quite realized how much they could make a difference and how much they can get involved with their resources that are very close to them. And that's something that I want people to take away from the film is not only, or you don't necessarily have to go on a 3-week journey to get to know the river or the mountains or the natural resources that you have near you. You can go outside and you can find river keepers or water keepers, which is the international side of our organization. And you can get involved with organizations that care for our resources and ask them what they need to do to help protect things, whether that be writing a legislator or going to a park to help clean it up, or getting involved by just telling people that something exists so that they get more people visiting it and more people caring about it. That's what we're hoping people will take away from this. Question 6. What was the most rewarding aspect of being involved in creating this film, and how did you hope it would resonate with viewers? The most rewarding part of being a part of this team and a part of this film was absolutely engaging with the high school students that we were able to work alongside with. Those students at the beginning of our trip, they hadn't met one another in person. There were only a few of them that were going to school. A lot of them were virtual students. Many of them had not met their teacher. It was their first year in high school, and so for them it was new peers, new classes, new school in general. But they were all tuning in virtually primarily. And so when we got to meet with them, we heard about their stories of learning about this river that they cross every single day pretty much when they go to school in person. But then they, at the beginning of the trip, couldn't point on a map to where it started. And so it was a river that they live on. It's a river that they're very familiar with as a name, as it exists in their city. But they didn't have a lot of familiarity with it as an overall contribution to the state of Virginia. And so learning more about it through the trip and following us along our expedition, they had a map in the classroom that their teacher would show them on Zoom or show them in person for the few that were there in person. And they would put stars on the map as we were headed downstream. And then they all came together and met us on Belle Isle in Richmond. And that was a really special day, not only for us, because we were able to meet the students behind the study that they were conducting, and got to meet them and know them and share their enthusiasm in the project that they were doing. But also, it was their first time meeting Emma, their teacher, in person. It was their first time meeting one another in person. And that was a really special moment that we were able to share with them. And then it kept going beyond that, because not only were the students inspired to continue to work on this and are continuing to work on this. I keep in touch with Emma still, and she told me that one of the students from the project is going on to apply for programs for college where she's going to study environmental science. But they had their IB biology and environmental science programs double in enrollment the following year, which is really exciting. So that absolutely was what was the most rewarding part of this. And I think how I want that to resonate with viewers is hopefully just seeing how much what you can do can make a difference in people's lives just by getting involved with an organization or going out and cleaning up a river and showing people what they have around them and connecting them to their environment, because people care about the things that they interact with. Question 7. The film encapsulates a genuinely personal and transformative experience. How did your personal connection to the project evolve through its creation? That's a great question. So I was on this trip for 3 weeks. So it was 21 days that we were on the trip. I spent several months mapping it out and planning it in advance. And as I was planning it, it was all just maps and campgrounds and meal plans and figuring out, where we were going to meet certain people and interview them. And it was all on paper. And it was for a river that I really do care about a lot. But yeah, I wasn't, I guess my heart was in it, but I definitely grew a lot of love for this river while we were on it. And I especially learned so much about its tidal region, and where it goes into the Chesapeake Bay, because I had never paddled that section before, and that ended up becoming one of my favorite parts of the trip, just because it's so diverse. There's so much wildlife, and it was very healthy. Like, you got down to the tidal region and out into the Chesapeake Bay, and we just saw immediately so many osprey, so many fish. We saw sturgeon, we saw hermit crabs, we saw even a harbor seal on the very last day. And it was just really incredible seeing how resilient this river is. And it was a big accomplishment personally to paddle from the headwaters of the James to the Chesapeake Bay, because it was something I wanted to do for years. Ever since I was a kid, when I learned how to paddle on that river, it was something that I had in the back of my mind as something I'd like to do. But I personally really did feel a big change in myself, and a swell of love for not just the river and what it holds, but also the community that surrounds the James River, and how many people really care from its headwaters to the bay across the state, for this river and its watershed and its protection, because there are people who work around the clock, day and night, for this river, and there are people who do that for many other rivers. And I think that made all of those things start to come together in my brain for me, and just have this wider appreciation for people who work in environmental conservation. Question 8. The women in the film show immense resilience and determination. Were there any personal stories or moments that particularly resonated with you during the filming process? Yeah, so my crew they are some of the most incredible women that I have ever met in my life. So Sejal has been my paddling mentor since I was 12, I think, and has taken me on rivers all around the United States and has shown me really incredible places. And then Beth and Grace both are really talented filmmakers and had not been on a canoe expedition before, but trusted that Sejal and I were going to take them down the river and hopefully not flip the canoe and make it out to the Chesapeake Bay. And I think working alongside these three women who every morning they woke up with a smile on their face and were ready to see what we were going to, see over the course of the next 20 miles on the river. They really did show a lot of resiliency and determination to continue on. We were fortunate in having fairly good weather, and so we didn't have a lot of challenges there, but we certainly had a wide array of weather. And so we started with freezing temperatures at the beginning of the trip and ended with near 100-degree days, Fahrenheit. And those were really long days that we would be paddling, and then those long days we would have the tides switch against us, and we would be paddling, and we could see our destination for 3 hours before we would finally make it to it. And so that resiliency and determination that those women showed, they really they kept me going throughout the trip, and lifted me up and encouraged me to keep going. And I really appreciate all of the work and dedication that they had as we headed downstream. And I think part of that wasn't reflected in the film, that we had a side story that ended up getting cut from the final just because of timing issues.
but I actually had an injury that was quite severe on the trip. I slipped on a root on a tree in camp one day, and I subluxed my kneecap, so it popped out, and was essentially not usable for a couple days. And so it was an injury that I had had before, but wasn't one that I was expecting to have on this trip. And it does make kneeling in a canoe quite difficult. It makes walking really difficult. And I couldn't carry things at all. And so every day when we got back into camp and unloaded the canoes, I wasn't very useful doing that. And there was a point where we had a discussion on whether or not I was going to be leaving the expedition, which likely was going to mean that we weren't going to continue on. And my team backed my decision to stay in the field, and they took on extra work so that I was able to get into camp and start resting my knee. And a couple days later, I was able to jump back in and do my fair share of the workload. But the team that I had with me just was so determined to keep going and wanted to support me in any way that was possible to make that happen. And I really appreciate that. And those women absolutely are just absolute powerhouses for being able to do that and keep a good attitude about it. The next question is, as an editor, you were responsible for shaping the narrative during post-production. What were some of the critical decisions you made in editing that contributed to the film's overall impact? Great question. So editing this film, so we wrapped in June of 2021, and then this film premiered in February of earlier this year. So as the film's editor and its main character, I had to be really careful to ensure that I was looking at it through an objective lens of essentially as if somebody handed me footage from an expedition that I was not involved in, and trying to shape that story. Because I wanted to make sure that I told the story of the James River and its community and its history and who we interacted with along the way without any kind of bias towards myself, and how maybe I looked on day 18 of an expedition. And so I decided to take some time off between wrapping filming and starting editing. And so I took a couple months off before I started to log the footage and ingest everything. And then I took 2 months to just look at all the footage that we had, and sort it and organize it. And then I took another month off before I started editing. And I think that process really helped me in taking a couple months before I even looked at the footage, looking at the footage over the course of a couple months, and then taking another month off and then coming back to it. And that allowed me to have some separation. It allowed me to work on a couple other projects in between, and just get some other experience that gave me a gap between working on this film in production and then going straight into post-production, and trying to edit, especially myself. And so as the editor, once I had that separation, I was able to go in and start looking at it from the stance of something where I wanted to use the history of the James River, because it's a very historical river, and I wanted to make sure that was highlighted alongside our expedition, and sort of weave in this narrative of both following us on this journey, but also following the river as it moves through time and history, as well as moves through the state of Virginia and affects each and every person along the way in its watershed. And I think the decisions that I made as an editor and how I decided to edit it, I really enjoyed working on that. For editing for me is like working on a puzzle and having pieces slowly fall into place. And then one day you just have this break where all of a sudden you sit down and you can't be ripped away from your computer because you have had this breakthrough on what is going to happen. And all of a sudden you sit back and the whole puzzle has been completed. And it's very exciting when that happens. And for me, when that happened in the editing process, was when I finally got the archival section of the film the way that I wanted it to be, so that I had the basis of why the issues of the environmental pollution issues that the James River faces, why those exist, was grounded in something that I was really happy with, and then I was able to build off of the expedition from there. And so those were some of the decisions that I made, and the process as I was editing. Next question. A River Called Home highlights the history of pollution in the James River. What were some of the most surprising or impactful revelations that emerged during the filming regarding both the river's past and present conditions? Yeah, so as we were paddling downstream, I don't think I realized exactly how much the voluntary part of the agricultural, like asking for cattle to stay out of the rivers, like asking farmers voluntarily to have their cattle stay out of rivers. I had not realized how much that was something that we as a state really rely on. And since being wrapped on the film and having it be distributed, I've learned about so many more programs that are available to farmers, and am currently actually working with a program in Virginia to spread the word more about these exclusion programs that are available for farmers to create cattle fencing so that they can stay out of the river. And it's a government-funded program, and it's just that though they have trouble reaching people who work within the agricultural industry to let them know that this funding is available to them. And so that was one side that I learned a lot about. On the side of the combined sewage overflow, we knew that that was an issue, and we knew that that was something that it takes a lot of money to fix, because the infrastructure is quite literally built right below the city streets and people's houses. And so it's really hard to go in and tear that up, and it's really expensive to go in and tear that up and completely redo it. However, I also have good news about that, because since this film has been finished, Lynchburg, which is one of the 2 cities on the James that still has the CSO system, has nearly completed overhauling their infrastructure. And so they're very close to capping the combined sewage issue in their city. Richmond is continuing to work on it, and it's something that is a top priority for their wastewater treatment managers. The folks that we met with in Richmond and toured with, that is their life's work. And they are so dedicated to ensuring that that is going to happen while they're working at the wastewater treatment centers. And it's a funding issue. And so that's one where I always encourage if people who see this film are living in Virginia to get in touch with their representative and say that this is something that's important to them. Let's see. I think I have time for one more question, so I'll go with this last one. In light of the challenges faced during the journey and the subsequent storytelling process, what advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers who are passionate about addressing environmental issues through their work? That's a great question. The question just above it also asked about what initially inspired me to make this film, and that's kind of gonna wrap into this one too. So I was inspired to make this film because this was something that it's a trip that I've wanted to do for a long time. And then I also was in a program at the time where I needed to make an environmental documentary, and as part of my school. And so I put together this expedition and pitched it to my professors, and asked them to trust that we were going to be able to pull it off. And they did, and they gave us the go ahead. And so when we were planning this trip, it was like a dream come true, because I was going to be able to not only go and explore this river that I have loved for my entire life, but I was also going to be able to do something that I was hoping was going to highlight just how both wonderful this river is and how much rivers and our natural resources really do need our support and help and protection. And so that was something where we went on this trip, and we learned a lot about ourselves, we learned a lot about the river, and we learned a lot about filmmaking. And so for people who want to address environmental issues and want to maybe become a filmmaker, it's something where the passion that you have is going to shine through in whatever you're working on. And so if you pick something that you're really passionate about, you can find people who are going to help. You can find people who are going to also engage with you, because if you're passionate about whatever it is that you want to tell a story about, then people are going to be able to read into that, and they're going to be able to feel that energy that you have for that topic. And if it's an environmental story, then you have people who are already tapped into caring about the environment, who are definitely going to want to help you and support you along the way. And so, I'm thrilled that people are here that maybe want to get into environmental filmmaking, because there can't be too many of us. There are a lot of stories on this planet, and there are a lot of stories that exist right in your backyard. And so getting to know where you live and what's available to you is the first step to doing that. That is all of the time we have. Thank you all so much for joining, and I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the film. Thank you again so much to the American Center in Moscow for putting this on, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.